You kill me. Kill me. Do it. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about all the books that I read in March. Can you believe it's March already? I can't believe it. And I'm sorry if you can hear the rain because it is storming outside and there's nothing I can do about that. So let's see. These are all the books that I read in March, so let's get into it. Okay, so I guess we're gonna go in chronological order. This month was a pretty good month for me. I read 6 books. I'd say the end of the month was probably a little bit better than the beginning of the month, but all the books I read were pretty good. Okay, well there's one book that I thought was okay, but for the most part, this was a pretty good reading month. So the first book that I read this month was Verity by Colleen Hoover. So this book is essentially about a struggling writer named Lowen, and she is hired to finish a famous book series for a writer who was recently in an accident and she's no longer able to finish the series. So this book takes you through Lowen when she goes to the writer's family's house, and she goes through the writer's office and goes through all of her notes and just things like that so that she's able to finish the book for the writer essentially. And while she's at this writer's house, she finds a manuscript that was never supposed to be seen, and in that manuscript is a lot of shady stuff that happens. So I thought this book was pretty good. I personally gave it a 3 stars. I finished this in I think a day and a half. This isn't my favorite Colleen Hoover book out of all the ones I've read by her before, but this one is definitely different for her. This one, I think, not her first like mystery romance, but one of her only mystery romances. And I thought it was really good. I think all of Colleen's books are super easy to read and super easy to get through, but I thought it was a good, quick, easy read, and I thought the things that were in the manuscript were mysterious and obviously horrible, but it wasn't anything, I don't know, to me it wasn't anything amazing or groundbreaking, so this one was pretty good. So this is Verity by Colleen Hoover. The next book I read this month was The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. So this book is essentially about a group of final girls who all meet I think they all meet once a week, basically like a support group for obviously final girls. And eventually someone finds out about the final girl support group and starts hunting down and targeting them. So this book specifically follows that group, but we follow one specific person in the group. Her name is Lynette, and it pretty much takes us through her everyday life afterwards of becoming a final girl. So the hardships she faces, the things she has to do because of the trauma that she encountered from, the situation that made her a final girl. This book takes us through us trying to figure out who's hunting down the group. So I give this book 3 stars. I thought it was really good. This book didn't seem like it, but this book is dense, okay? Very, very tiny writing, and I don't know, I think this book is a little over 300, it's like 350 pages, but it took me a little while to get through this book. Usually it takes me like 3 or 4 days to get through a book, but this time I think this one took me about a week. But I thought this book was pretty good. I didn't love it as much as the first book that I read by this author, but it was a good mystery, and yeah, I definitely think you should pick it up. Okay, so the next book I read is Credence by Penelope Douglas. So this book, honestly, I was severely disappointed by this book. I'm really sad that I didn't like this book because I was really excited for it. This book is about a girl named Tiernan who has 2 famous parents. I believe her father was an actor and her mother was a socialite, but both of her parents recently died, and they died at the same time. So she is sent to live with her step-uncle Jake in the mountains of Colorado. She's from California. And there's a lot of different things that happens once she goes to Colorado. Listen, if you know, you know. This book is very taboo if you know what it's about. So she goes to Colorado, and her step-uncle and her cousins are the only family that she has left because she was an only child, and obviously both of her parents died at the same time. So she's sent to live with them because she isn't 18 yet, and once she gets there, there's just a lot of things that happen. She essentially becomes involved with all 4 of them. And yeah, this book is very spicy, very, very smutty. I thought I was gonna like it. I mean, just look at the cover. It's just so pretty. But I thought I was really gonna like this, but unfortunately I really didn't like it. I think I gave this a 2-star. Yeah, I gave this a 2-star on Goodreads. It's just, to me, there was a lot of things wrong with it versus what I liked about it. I read the whole thing and it only took me a couple days to get through, so it was an enjoyable read, but looking back on it, there's a lot of things that I didn't like about it. Okay, so I'm just gonna read out some notes that I wrote while I was reading this book. So I said that this book was really smutty, which it obviously is, because she was in a relationship with all 3 of her step cousins and her step uncle. I thought the smut was really entertaining, but personally, if I'm gonna read a spicy, smutty book, I'd rather it be with a purpose. I couldn't really believe the relationships in this book just because I don't really feel like we were able to see a backstory of all the characters. Especially in the end, she chooses, one of them to be with. And the one she chooses, I just don't understand the relationship between them. So I essentially didn't like her choice at the end. I thought the pacing of this book kind of gave me whiplash because we just switched to so many different timelines. Like in one scene, I don't know, they'll be doing something random like taking care of the animals at the farm, and then the next chapter it'll be like 6 weeks have passed, and I'm like, wait a minute. I don't know, I just felt like the pacing was really off, and I feel like I couldn't get into the story because the pacing was so off, because we just jumped from 1 month to 6 months later to a year later. I just felt like it was kind of all over the place. But yeah, so it was just a 2-star, I think I gave it a 2.75 on Storygraph, but on Goodreads you can only put whole stars, so I put 2 stars for this just because I definitely couldn't give it a 3-star. At least for me, 3 stars means I enjoyed the book, but it wasn't amazing. This one, I was really disappointed. I really thought I was gonna like it, but just for me, the pacing was really off. It jumped around all over the place, and I don't feel like we got enough backstory for a lot of the characters for me to get attached to them and actually, want her to be with one of them. Ultimately, I thought it was entertaining, but in the end, I didn't really like it all that much, so that's 2 stars from me. The next book I read is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So I'm really proud of myself for actually picking up this book and getting to it, because like I mentioned in my last video, I was really scared and I was really intimidated by this book just because I really don't read a lot of Greek mythology, and I heard that obviously this is a retelling of Patroclus and Achilles. So I was really intimidated because I never learned about Greek mythology, and I never really read about it either, so I thought it would be something, I don't know, maybe a little too smart for me. But I read this along with the audiobook and it honestly helped me out a lot. But yeah, I'm really proud of myself for picking this up because I've literally had this on my shelf for 6 months. This book essentially follows Patroclus, and he is an exiled prince, and it follows the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles. In the beginning of the book, Patroclus is exiled by his family and he is sent to go live in the kingdom where Achilles lives. And this book isn't super plot heavy, but it's mainly character driven, so we get to see the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles, and honestly, this book was so beautifully written. I didn't think I was gonna like this book as much as I did, but I ultimately gave this a 5-star just because of the writing and the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles. I didn't have a lot of thoughts while reading the book. Honestly, I was just enjoying the story so much I think I forgot to write down what I actually wanted to say in the video. This story was really, really good, and I think Madeline Miller might be one of my new favorite authors, so I'm definitely going to read one of her other books. I have Circe, so I'm definitely going to pick that up hopefully soon. I don't know, I have a lot of books that I want to read, but this book was really, really good, and I loved the writing, and I loved the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles, so I'm really glad that I read this, and I'm really proud of myself for reading this. Okay, so the next book I read was The Deal by Elle Kennedy. So this book is essentially about a girl named Hannah who makes a deal with a hockey player named Garrett, and essentially she has to tutor them, and I won't tell you why she has to tutor him because I'm not sure if it's on the back of the book, but she ends up tutoring him so that his GPA doesn't plummet, and obviously, you know, she doesn't want to, so this book takes us through her tutoring him and kind of the aftermath that comes with them being together and eventually they do get in a relationship. It's not a spoiler because it's on the back of the book. So eventually they do get into a relationship, and honestly this book was so much fun to read. I really didn't think I was gonna like it. I think I mentioned in my last video that I wasn't super excited to read this, but honestly this might be my favorite of the month just because it was so, I don't know, it made me so giddy. I was literally in Barnes & Noble just smiling to myself. I'm like, good thing we have mass, because I was just giddy while reading this. I think this is the most fun I've had reading in quite a long time. Okay, some things I wrote down while I was reading this book. So I said it's the most fun I've had reading in a really long time. It was genuinely a good time, and I literally laughed out loud throughout this whole book. The banter in this book is unmatched, and Garrett Graham in this book is unmatched. The sarcasm and the humor in this book was literally my type, so I was just enjoying this book throughout the whole thing. So I literally flew through this book. This book was such a easy and fast read, and I really loved it. So this one was surprisingly a 5 stars for me. The last book I read this month I actually finished yesterday, and that is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. So I mentioned in my last video that everyone told me that you just have to read it, it's amazing, just read it. So that's what I did, and honestly I didn't love it. So this book is about a girl named Macy, and her mother recently passed away, so her and her dad actually buy a kind of like a lake house a couple hours away from where they live. Next door to that lake house is a boy named Elliot. So Macy and Elliot become best friends, and all day they spend reading in a closet in her room. And it's essentially just the love story of Macy and Elliot and just the trials and tribulations they have to go through their relationship. There's also a time frame of about 10 years where they stop talking. So the book has 2 perspectives from when they were children to when they're adults after they've been separated and haven't been talking for about a decade. A couple things I really liked about this book. I liked that it was separate timelines. Like, you got to see them when they were kids and the relationship from then, and then you also got to see them in the present where they actually start talking again. You actually don't find out why they stopped talking until literally like the last 50 pages of the book. So I think this book was a little bit too slow for me, and I possibly don't like friends to lovers. I don't think I like that trope. Maybe this just wasn't the book for me, but I thought this book was a little bit too slow. Essentially, I enjoyed reading it. It was about, I think it took me about 3 days to get through. But I don't know. I thought I was gonna love it more than I did, but I think it was just too slow for me, and I don't think friends to lovers is my thing. I gave this a 3.75 on Storygraph and a 3 stars on Goodreads. I wanted to love this more than I thought I would, and this is kind of a thick book, so it took me not too long to get through, but finding out what happened and why they stopped talking for literally a decade, finding out that in the last 50 pages, I think it was just too long for me. In the end, I was kind of just over it. I think I was gonna give this 2 stars in the beginning. I don't think I was really connected to the characters like I wanted to be, but in the end, when we did find out what happened and why they stopped talking, it did save it for me because it kind of gave a reason to why we were going back and forth from them as kids to them in the future or in the present. But yeah, I think it was a little too late for me when we actually found out why they stopped talking. So yeah, I gave this a 3 stars. So yeah, so these were all the books that I read in March. I'm really excited to film this video. I've always wanted to film a wrap-up video so I can give you all my thoughts on the books that I read. I've had a pretty good reading month. I think if I had to choose, I think The Deal would be my favorite, or Song of Achilles. I like these for 2 different reasons, but they both were 5 stars for me. I don't know, honestly I can't choose, so I say both of these books were 5 stars and they were both my favorite of the month. Usually I have 1, but this month I have 2, so I think this month was a pretty good reading month. Thank you so much for watching this video. I was really excited to film it, and hopefully next month I can read a lot more, but honestly I don't know. My life is pretty busy, so we'll see how much I can read. But I say 6 books. 6 books for me is pretty good. I think last month I read 7 books, so 6 is pretty good. I don't think I'll ever be able to catch up to the amount I'm buying books, but that's okay. Please like and subscribe so that you can be notified when I upload new videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.